Just over 3 years ago, I set myself the challenge of learning various calisthenics skills, a journey that's had many ups and a fair few downs. And after teaching myself a bunch of movements that I never thought I would learn, I decided to take on a skill that I've been dreading for the longest time, the front lever. This was the first skill I've looked at and genuinely had no idea how I was going to get there. I mean, look at it. But I put all that fear to one side and started day one, as I always do, with a test of where I was at. But actually, because of the benefits on working on previous calisthenics skills, I could already hold a tuck front lever and even perform a few rows in this position, a result of the strength built up from the fundamental movements I always rave about on this channel. But I knew this wouldn't be enough, not even nearly enough. My first attempt was shoddy, but I was actually quite happy with it as a starter, and the initial program I set myself leaned on pull-ups, scapular raises, and inverted rows as the core of my pull day training. Now, those of you that are paying attention may have noticed that I left out all progressions. There are no tuck front lever or band assisted front levers mentioned here. And the reason for this is that I knew my pulling strength was nowhere near what it needed to be, and I needed to get that on point first before dialing up any specificity. This focus on general strength also had the secondary benefit of ensuring my connective tissue would be ready to take the load that I'd eventually be putting on it. This worked quite well for me, and I saw significant progress from this approach for a while, and after nearly 3 months of this I was feeling very strong, and so from here I dialed up my training to be more focused on building up transferable strength. Only now I began to layer on front lever progressions, band assisted at first and then negatives with one leg, with the other main exercises in this phase being the weighted pull-up. In the survey of 10,000 calisthenics athletes that we've reviewed on this channel before, we know how proficient those who can front lever are with weighted pull-ups, and so I set myself the mini task of getting to a 50% bodyweight pull-up. I worked on leveling up my pulling game for a while, going for more weight on my pull-ups and thinner bands on my assisted front levers. Whenever I felt the overload and the fatigue of heavy strength work was getting too much for me, I would deload from anywhere from 5 days to about a week and reverted to lower intensity work aimed at building up the muscles that I would need to get bigger in order to front lever. What this essentially looked like was rolling 6 to 8 week cycles of these training approaches, where each time I would revisit a cycle, I would aim to make it more challenging than the last time I did it, whether by making reps more explosive during cycle 1 hypertrophy phase, or adding more weight or reducing the band strength during cycle 2 strength phase. One thing I will say is that I did waste time on some exercises that I feel I could have cut out completely. One of these being the single leg front lever hold. In my opinion, the ceiling of this benefit is very much limited, even if it does feel fun to do. But I eventually broke free of this and started to layer on tuck front lever raises, an exercise that I really enjoyed and felt exposed a lot about my shoulders. For example, when I first started doing these, I struggled to eliminate the arch in my back even with tucked legs. This told me that my shoulders just weren't strong enough for what I was looking to do, but with practice I was eventually able to keep my hips and shoulders in line. But progressing out of here led me to the biggest problem I'd faced along my front lever journey, and fundamentally it came from a lack of belief. With the muscle up, I always felt I could get there through sheer brute force of pulling strength. With the back lever, I knew as long as my connective tissue was well conditioned, I'd have no real issue with it. Even with the handstand, despite all the frustration that skill gave me, there was an element of knowing that it was possible, largely because of the vain pride that if little kids could do it, then why couldn't I? But this lack of belief with the front lever meant that I rarely extended my legs as far as they could go when I was training the front lever if I didn't have a band to assist me. And despite getting to a point where I was using a thin band to assist with my static holds, and I even got to a 50% bodyweight pull-up around this time by the way, I noticed that whenever I did attempt a front lever progression without a band, I couldn't eliminate this pike at the hips, and this plagued me over and over again. That wasn't until somebody left a comment under one of my front lever vlogs that I should attempt a front lever hold at an incline, and this was just what I needed, and it forced me to understand what I had to do at the hips in order to keep the body in line. And on top of all of this, it gave me an easy route to scale because I could just measure how low I was getting on that front lever hold. If I piked at the hips, I knew I was pushing it too far, because at this point in my training, I'd rather hold a better front lever at a higher incline than a crappier hold with a pike. These incline holds were eventually paired with band-assisted raises to build more strength throughout that range of motion. And then on my next strength cycle, I even entertained straddle negatives, and though these were a bit beyond me at first, I kept pushing until on day 573, nearly 2 years after setting this challenge, I did this. Now, I know this is just a straddle. My goal is still to learn the full front lever, but I'm currently injured with a hernia at the moment, and that will have to wait for a little bit. But this has made me start to think that maybe even some of the more advanced skills could be in my wheelhouse if I could just dismiss some of these limiting beliefs. But cheers for watching, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want to check out any of the other skills that I've learned on this channel, then check out this video right here.